So I want you to imagine, just for a second, sitting in the damp, freezing dark of a cave.
Oh, wow. Yeah, a very dark place.
Right, somewhere in the Middle East. And you're listening to the sound of heavily armed men pacing right outside.
Just a terrifying scenario.
Completely. I
Yeah.
mean, their singular, explicit mission
Mhm.
is to hunt you down and assassinate you. You're trapped, you're exhausted, and you've been betrayed by the people closest to you.
Yeah.
In that moment of absolute terror, what is the very first thing you write down? Because today, for this deep dive, we are looking at an ancient survival manual written by someone in exactly that scenario.
Which is just wild to think about.
It really is. We've got a bilingual Hebrew-English manuscript of the Psalms on the table today. And look, we're not going to treat this like some, dusty academic theology lecture.
No, absolutely not. Because honestly, we're looking at it as a masterclass in psychological survival.
Right.
When people think of ancient religious texts, they usually expect a pristine theoretical rule book.
Like a list of rules.
Exactly, a list of categorical imperatives where, if you just do X, Y, and Z, then everything works out perfectly.
Right. The universe just rewards you.
Yeah, but the text we are diving into today is the absolute definition of a lived, messy, visceral theology.
Visceral is a great word for it.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to trace the psychological journey of the writer, the psalmist, as they navigate intense hardship, severe isolation, and just this profound emotional whiplash,
Uh-huh.
all while trying to figure out what it actually means to be a quote-unquote righteous person in a world that feels incredibly wicked and chaotic.
And the way this manuscript is laid out is just fascinating.
Yeah.
Because if you think of it like a movie script, right?
Yeah, I like that.
You get the setup of how things should be, the conflict where everything totally falls apart, and then this dramatic climax where the hero finds their footing again.
Yes.
It establishes this baseline expectation right out of the gate. Before we get into the caves and the assassins and all the messy stuff, Psalm 1 sets up the ultimate contrast. It presents this ideal version of reality.
The blueprint.
Exactly, the blueprint, a very stark, dramatic divide between two types of people, the righteous and the wicked. And all the imagery is entirely drawn from the natural world.
Yeah, the nature metaphors here are incredibly deliberate. Like Psalm 1 describes the righteous person as being like a tree planted by streams of water.
Right.
A tree that brings forth its fruit in its season and whose leaf doesn't wither. But then it flips the camera completely to the wicked and says, well, not so the wicked, but they are like the chaff which the wind driveth away.
The chaff which the wind driveth away. I mean, if you think about the mechanics of a tree versus chaff, the difference is entirely about grounding.
Right, yeah.
The tree has this complex, invisible root system, right? It's tapping into a constant, sustaining water source. It takes years to grow. It is anchored.
It's not going anywhere.
Right. But chaff is just, the lightweight, dried-out husk of the wheat grain. After it gets crushed on the threshing floor, it has literally zero substance.
Just dust, basically.
Yeah. A slight breeze comes along, and it is instantly swept into the air and scattered everywhere.
And if we map that agricultural metaphor onto your life today, the text actually gives us the mechanism for how a person becomes that deeply rooted tree.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it isn't magic. It says, the righteous person's delight is in the law of the Lord, and in his law doth he meditate day and night.
Meditate day and night.
Right. The mechanism is what you choose to habitually absorb. The word for meditate in the original language actually implies a low, continuous murmuring.
Like a hum?
Exactly. It is a constant, steady, internal dialogue with something permanent.
Which, that feels like a direct indictment of the modern attention economy.
Oh, 100%.
If you want to know what being chaff looks like today, it is the perfect description of modern doom scrolling.
That is a brilliant way to frame it, really.
Well, think about it. You're sitting on your couch, endlessly swiping through lightweight, totally disconnected bits of information. You are completely unanchored.
Right, just blown in the wind.
Exactly. The algorithm blows a new, social media outrage or a trending panic in your direction, and you were immediately swept away by that wind.
Yeah.
Then an hour later, the wind changes direction, and your emotional state just gets blown somewhere else entirely. You have no deep roots. You are just reacting to the breeze.
Which is exhausting.
So exhausting. Being the tree means intentionally planting your attention by a stream of steady, enduring truth.
And the text pushes that contrast even further by showing the ultimate dramatic destinies of these two paths. Like Psalm 37 heightens the stakes significantly.
Oh, this is the one with the weapons, right?
Yes. It describes the wicked as having drawn up the sword and have bent their bow to cast down the poor and needy.
So scary.
In the immediate moment, the wicked look incredibly powerful. They're intimidating, they're successful. I mean, they have the weapons. They clearly have the upper hand.
But there's a fascinating twist in the very next verse. It says, "Their swords shall enter into their own heart, and their bows shall be broken."
Yeah, it's such a vivid image.
It's wild. The text is basically claiming that malice is inherently self-destructive. The evil they're plotting literally collapses in on itself. Meanwhile, the righteous, the ones who look totally vulnerable and are currently being hunted, are repeatedly promised they will, quote, inherit the land.
Won it the long game.
Exactly. The wicked are going to vanish like smoke, but the tree has a lasting future.
Yeah, it's a very clear-cut promise.
But wait, hold on. This is where I struggle a bit with this text.
Okay, let's hear it.
It paints this beautiful, symmetrical picture, right? Plant yourself by the stream, be a tree, prosper, inherit the land, and just sit back and watch the bad guys trip on their own swords.
Sounds nice, doesn't it?
It sounds great. But if the righteous are so inherently protected by this divine order, why is the guy who wrote a huge chunk of this poetry, David, spending half the manuscript running for his life in absolute terror?
That is the big question.
I mean, that doesn't sound like a peaceful tree by a stream. That sounds like total chaos.
And that collision between the beautiful ideal and the terrifying reality, that is the entire engine of the Psalms.
Yeah.
The text doesn't hide the contradiction, it
Well-
leans into it. The manuscript actually includes historical markers right at the top of the poems detailing David's real-world trauma.
Yeah, the little subheadings.
Exactly. Take Psalm 3. The heading explicitly states it was written when he fled from Absalom, his son.
His own son.
Yeah, this is a father running for his life because his own child has usurped the throne and is trying to kill him. He cries out, "Lord, how many are mine adversaries become?"
Wow.
Or look at Psalm 57, which was composed while he was hiding in that very cave we talked about earlier, fleeing from King Saul.
Reading through these specific crisis poems, the physical danger is obvious. But what really jumps off the page to me is the crushing psychological weight.
The emotional toll.
Yeah, the isolation is so visceral. Like in Psalm 25, he pleads, "Turn thee unto me and be gracious unto me, for I am solitary and afflicted."
Solitary and afflicted. I mean, it is the profound realization that despite previously having armies and courts around him, he is fundamentally entirely alone in his suffering.
He uses this analogy in Psalm 102 that I honestly haven't been able to stop thinking about.
Which one?
He says, "I am like a pelican of the wilderness. I am become as an owl of the waste places. I watch and have become like a sparrow that is alone upon the housetop."
A sparrow alone on a housetop.
A sparrow alone on a housetop. If you live in a sprawling modern city, you know that exact feeling.
Oh, the paradox of urban isolation.
Yes. You can be sitting in an apartment in a high-rise building with literally millions of people living within a 5-mile radius of you.
Right.
You can have thousands of followers on your phone. The air is practically thick with human connection. Yet you can sit by your window, look out at the skyline, and feel utterly, overwhelmingly like that single sparrow on the roof.
It's so true.
The loneliness he is describing translates flawlessly across thousands of years.
It translates because the emotional reality hasn't changed. Human nature is exactly the same. And this is where the text offers a very specific type of spiritual comfort.
How so?
Well, it refuses to offer a sanitized version of the world. It doesn't tell the reader to just smile and pretend the bad things aren't happening.
Right, no toxic positivity.
Exactly. Look at perhaps the most famous passage in the entire manuscript, Psalm 23. "Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me."
Right.
The psychological comfort here is highly specific.
It's not the absence of the dark valley.
No. The valley is still completely dark. The shadow of death is still right there. The comfort is the presence of God in the middle of it.
Wow.
A few lines later, he says, "God prepares a table for him in the presence of mine adversaries." That is a wild image.
Wait, yeah, the assassins are still standing right there in the room watching him eat.
Exactly. The threat hasn't been removed, but his internal reality has radically shifted.
Which is, I mean, that's the biggest mystery of this whole deep dive for me.
Yeah.
How does a human brain actually make that jump?
It's not easy.
Because you don't just go from, "my son is trying to murder me and I'm a lonely sparrow," straight to, "I fear no evil, someone passed the bread."
Right.
That feels like complete delusion.
If it jumped straight there, it absolutely would be. But the Psalms provide an incredibly detailed anatomy of emotional change.
Okay.
It documents a staged, agonizing progression from deep sorrow to trust. It does not happen instantly.
Let's track that progression,
Mhm.
because stage 1 seems to be just raw, completely unfiltered questioning. He is essentially screaming at the ceiling.
Oh, absolutely.
And Psalm 13 is, how long shall mine enemy be exalted over me?
Yeah.
And in Psalm 22, he writes, my God, why hast thou forsaken me?
Yeah.
There's no polite religious filter there at all. He feels abandoned, and he is stating it as a cold, hard fact.
And the text validates the necessity of that raw phase. You cannot heal what you refuse to acknowledge.
Yeah.
But then the psychology shifts into stage 2, which is characterized by the feeling of being completely overwhelmed.
Okay, how does that look?
Well, remember the calm, life-giving streams of water nourishing the tree in Psalm 1?
Yeah, the nice little stream.
Right. In this stage of grief, the water is weaponized. In Psalm 42, the writer says, "Deep calleth unto deep at the voice of thy cataracts, all thy waves and thy billows are gone over me."
Oh, man. It goes from a quiet irrigation stream to a catastrophic flood.
Exactly.
He is describing the literal sensation of drowning.
It is a flawless metaphorical description of a panic attack or, clinical depression. You are pulled under, the waves are crashing over your head, and you just cannot catch your breath.
Wow.
The external circumstances have completely hijacked your internal state.
So if you are drowning under these cataracts, how do you get out? Because I noticed a massive pivot in the text right after this.
Yes.
In stage 3, the dialogue changes direction. Instead of talking to God or talking about his enemies, the writer starts talking to himself.
This is such a crucial shift.
Right. In Psalm 42, he asks, why art thou cast down, O my soul? And why moanest thou within me? Hope thou in God. He's literally coaching his own nervous system.
He is interrupting the spiral. We see the exact same mechanism in Psalm 77.
Oh, yeah.
The writer describes an agonizing night of insomnia. His soul refuses to be comforted. His spirit is overwhelmed. He cannot sleep. He is caught in this vicious loop of despair.
So relatable.
Right, but then he makes a conscious, forced choice. He states, "I will make mention of the deeds of the Lord. Yea, I will remember thy wonders of old. I will meditate also upon all thy work."
Okay, I have to play devil's advocate here.
Do it.
I am looking at Psalm 77, and he is talking about remembering the past. But the guys with the swords are still outside the cave.
Yes, they are.
The waves are still crashing over his head.
Mm-hmm.
Is he just completely detaching from reality here? Like, how does just thinking about past wonders actually help when your present reality is actively trying to destroy you?
That is the crucial question. And the answer lies in how cognitive grounding works.
Okay.
You are right. The external circumstances have not changed 1 millimeter. The men with swords are still there. But the shift is an act of psychological defiance.
Defiance.
Yes. When trauma hits, the human brain develops tunnel vision. It can only see the immediate threat. By stubbornly choosing to remember the wonders of old, by recounting specific historical times when God was faithful, the psalmist is actively forcing his brain out of the fight-or-flight response.
Oh, I see.
He is anchoring himself to a larger narrative that transcends his current terror.
He is manually forcing his roots back down into the soil, even while the wind is trying its absolute hardest to blow him away like chaff.
Yes, exactly. He is reclaiming his identity as the tree. And what is truly remarkable is that this psychological anchoring isn't just happening in the themes of the words, it is structurally built into the architecture of the Hebrew language itself.
I actually noticed this when looking through the source manuscript, particularly in Psalm 119.
Oh, the big one.
Right. There are these strange capitalized markers breaking up the stanzas. Words like Aleph, Deleth, and Zain. What exactly is happening there?
Those are the letters of the Hebrew alphabet. Psalm 119 is a massive acrostic poem.
Really?
Yeah, it is highly disciplined. In the original Hebrew, every single line in the first 8-verse stanza begins with the first letter, Aleph. Every line in the second stanza begins with the second letter, Beth, and so on through the entire alphabet.
Wow. That sounds incredibly difficult to write.
It is.
Why would someone experiencing severe distress force their poetry into such a rigid, arbitrary box?
Because the structure itself is a survival mechanism. Modern psychologists use similar grounding techniques with trauma victims today.
Like the 5 senses thing.
Exactly. If you are having a panic attack, a therapist will tell you to name 5 things you can see, 4 things you can touch, 3 you can hear. It forces the chaotic, terrified brain to focus on a rigid, predictable task. For the psalmist, imposing the absolute order of the alphabet onto his sprawling, messy grief is a way of containing the chaos.
That's brilliant.
It is a tangible reminder that even when his emotions are completely unspooled, there is a fundamental divine order to the universe. A follows B. The alphabet holds steady.
The container holds the chaos. I love that. And there's another structural quirk that functions similarly, right? The word Selah.
Ah, yes, Selah.
It appears constantly throughout the Psalms, almost always after a particularly terrifying image or a sudden emotional shift. For example, in Psalm 3, David describes thousands of people rising up against him, and then the text just says Selah.
Yeah, Selah is widely understood by scholars to be a musical or liturgical direction.
Like a stage direction.
Right. Remember, these were meant to be sung or chanted. Selah acts as a built-in mandatory pause. It commands the musicians to play an interlude, and it commands the singers and the listeners to stop.
To breathe.
It is a cognitive speed bump.
You read something horrific, and your heart rate starts to spike. But the text throws up a stop sign. Selah. Hold on. Stop scrolling.
Yeah, exactly.
Do not move to the next thought yet. Breathe and process what just happened. We desperately need more selahs in our modern daily routines. The whole world is designed to keep us moving at maximum speed from one outrage to the next.
Without the pause, you cannot make the pivot. The Selah is the space where the emotional escalator moves from drowning under the waves to remembering the wonders of old. It is the space where resolution begins.
Which brings us to the final destination of this journey. Because we started with the clear-cut baseline of the rooted tree versus the scattered chaff.
Right.
We plunged into the messy, traumatic reality of being a hunted sparrow drowning under violent waves. But the text doesn't leave us in the water. It resolves.
It resolves into profound praise, but a praise that is deeply earned, not cheaply given. Psalm 30 captures this transformation beautifully. It acknowledges the trauma. It doesn't erase it, but it points to the inevitable dawn. The text says, "Weeping may tarry for the night, but joy cometh in the morning."
Oh, I've heard that.
It's famous for a reason, and it culminates with, "Thou didst turn for me my mourning into dancing. Thou didst loose my sackcloth and gird me with gladness."
From the heavy, scratchy fabric of sackcloth to the freedom of dancing, it is a complete internal reversal, facilitated by that brutal, honest, emotional processing.
And that journey leaves us with one incredibly provocative final thought to carry with us today.
Okay.
If you read through all these texts, you will see David constantly praying for deliverance from his physical, external enemies. He is praying for the wind to stop.
Yeah.
He wants the swords to break and the assassins to vanish. But when you analyze the actual resolution of these poems, the true victory is almost never about seeing the enemy destroyed.
Wait, the victory isn't defeating the people trying to kill him.
Not fundamentally. The true victory is that the psalmist's own heart survived the ordeal intact. The victory is that, despite the absolute darkest of circumstances, he managed to remain that tree planted by streams of water.
Wow.
The external threats become secondary to his internal posture of trust. The tragedy wouldn't be dying in the cave. The tragedy would be turning into chaff while in the cave.
The tragedy is becoming chaff.
Yeah.
That completely reframes how we look at our own struggles.
It really does.
It challenges you to ask a really difficult diagnostic question. In your own life, right now, are you burning all your energy trying to control the wind of your circumstances?
Yeah.
Are you desperately trying to force the external world to calm down? Because maybe the real battle isn't out there. Maybe the true victory is just figuring out how to deepen your own roots while the storm is raging.
Absolutely.
So the next time you find yourself feeling like a lonely sparrow on a roof, just drowning in the noise, remember the ancient blueprint. You don't have to defeat the wind. You just have to be the tree.